In a town forgotten by time, where trouble rides in with the wind and legends fade slower than scars, the dry heat settled on Thorn Gap like a brand. Dust blew through the empty Main Street, swirling around the shuttered Mercantile, and weather cracked. Hitching rails, then drifted toward the clapboard courthouse that hadn't seen justice in years. At the far end of the street, under a peeling sign that read Public Auction Livestock in Misk, a skinny man in a sweat-stained waistcoat pounded his gavel hard enough to splinter the wood. Next lot, he barked, voice echoing off vacant. Storefronts. One female, name listed as Marlies Keene, age 21. Sound of limb, literate, and he squinted at the paper, possessed of a temper unfit for polite company. We open at 5 cents and 1 loaf fresh from Oleander Bakery. A ripple of uneasy laughter slid through the ragged onlookers. Most had gathered only because there was nowhere else to be, and tragedy, especially. Cheap tragedy made good conversation over evening stew. Marley stood on the warped plank beside a crate of cracked lamp chimneys, hands cuffed in front of her, ankles tethered by cotton rope to the platform post. Sun blistered her shoulders through the thin muslin of her only dress. The air tasted of mesquite smoke and stale sweat, and every breath scraped raw against the back of her throat. Stare straight ahead, she told herself. Pretend the world ends at the horizon. Yet the world pressed close leering men, pitying women, dirt-speckled children perched on rain barrels. And beyond them, she glimpsed her stepfather leaning against a wagon tongue, hat pulled low so no one could read the relief on his face. 5 cents and a loaf of bread would keep him and his new wife alive another week. Marlies Keene was simply another tool pawned, then forgotten. 4 cents. Someone shouted from the far side of the corral fence, followed by scattered hoots. The auctioneer waited, tapping his gavel like a man collecting debts. A pair of boots crunched across the dust. The sound was measured, neither hurried nor hesitant, but each step carried the weight of storms. Heads turned as Hezekiah Langford called. Zeke, by the handful of neighbors unafraid to do so, walked into the circle. Tall, broad-shouldered, and sun-creased, he wore a black coat brushed clean of trail grit and a gray beard trimmed close. On his left stood Fisher, the youngest of his 7 sons, barely 14 and already lean as Coyote Winter. The boys. Eyes burned with questions he dared not voice. Zeke stopped before the platform, removed his hat, and rested one hand on the pommel of a saddle that bore more scars than most men. 5 cents, he said, voice low but carrying, and the bread. No one raised further. The auctioneer's gavel dropped. Wood cracked. Sold. It was finished, the bargain struck, the story written with a single dull thud. Marlies felt the moment shudder through her bones. 5 cents and warm bread exchanged hands. The rope around her ankles was cut, yet the cuff stayed until Zeke produced a small iron key. He pressed it into the lock with surprising gentleness, as though worried skin might bruise under too much notice. When the metal sprung, Marlies massaged her wrists, refusing to acknowledge the tremor that threatened her fingers. Zeke didn't stare at her the way the others had, like she was something picked up and shaken to guess at worth. Instead, his gaze stayed level, color of thunderclouds above a distant mountain range. "I'll fetch the bread," Fisher offered. Voice cracking. "See that the baker is paid honest," Zeke answered. He turned back to Marlies. "I've a wagon at the end of the street. Ride if you wish. Walk if you'd rather trust your own legs. Either way, sun'll drop fast. Choice." The word felt foreign. She glanced toward her stepfather, expecting. A final glance, a nod, a crumb of apology. He didn't lift his head. With a breath that tasted of courthouse dust, Marley stepped off the platform, nearly staggering when blood surged through numb calves. Zeke matched her stride. Slow enough she could pretend she didn't need the pace. Fisher joined, Loaf wrapped in burlap under one arm. The gap between Thorn Gap's auction block and Langford land stretched 20 hard miles. Each mile would carry her farther from the girl she'd been 2 hours ago, and toward the woman the West demanded she become. The wagon rattled along Devil's Spine Ridge, moon rising fat and orange behind them. Crickets sang, harmonizing with the creak of leather traces. Fisher dozed against a sack of feed, straw clinging to his hair. Zeke sat forward on the driver's bench, reins loose, eyes scanning the road for rock slides or bandits too desperate to mind a loaded rifle glimpsed. Between the boards, Marlies rode beside him in silence. Every jostle bruised tailbone and pride alike, but she gritted her teeth. Better ache than speak foolishly. Still, thoughts swirled. Why me? What strings tighten around a widower's heart that he would buy a stranger instead of hiring a hand? She risked a glance. Moonlight silvered the scar lining Zeke's cheek, the kind forged by Bowie knives, not barbers. She studied calloused fingers, the faint tremor in his left hand when the wagon hit a rut. A man shaped by loss, she knew loss. Miles later, he broke the hush. My boys need something I can't supply alone, a woman's good sense, a steady word, a roof that feels like more than rafters and nails. Saw the way you kept your chin when men laughed. Figured grit like that might be worth 5 cents in bread we can spare. The admission stunned her more than thunder. Worth, not a bargain struck out of craving or cruelty, but a calculation. Of character. She wrapped arms tighter around herself. You paid nothing for me. 5 cents is a nickel more than most men would part with to see a soul fed and free in the same breath. Free, the word flickered, fragile as lightning bugs. Freedom on someone else's land? Freedom carved from chores and furrowed fields? She wanted to scoff, but the night smelled of sage and possibility. 7 sons, she murmured. That's a rope to keep any woman home. It's a rope spins both ways. Zeke guided the wagon around a switchback, glance slicing sideways. They'll test you, but they're good when you stand your ground. I've stood on worse. He grunted approval. For another mile only hoofbeats spoke. Then, you got kin might look for you. No. The syllable left a hollow. No. One who'd spend the ride. Then Thorn Gap was never your refuge. She shook her head. Let's see if Stillwater Creek can be. The name pulsed with promise. She tucked it into the empty pocket where hope might live. They rolled into Langford land just past midnight. Rolling hills unfurled like black velvet under starlight. Fenced pastures dotted with sleeping cattle. At the crest of a rise stood the ranch house, 2-story, cedar-sided, windows glowing amber. A barn hulked nearby, doors thrown wide despite nightfall, lantern inside swaying. Figures moved sons. Finishing chores dot as wagon wheels crunched into the yard. Dogs bayed. A lanky boy, Nicodemus, second youngest, appeared in the doorway, pitchfork in hand, aggressive curiosity on his face. Behind him, the twins Ephraim and Ezekiel leaned against a hayloft ladder, eyes gleaming. The eldest Jonah, Silas, and Bartram strode from shadows like pillars cut from Wyoming granite. Zeke set the brake. Boys, he called, this is Marlies Keene. Should be staying. Silence pooled, thick as sorghum. Jonah broad-shouldered, beard flecked with sawdust crossed. Arms, staying how? Like family, Zeke said, voice brooking no argument. Ephraim snorted. Ain't May, and we don't need another. Maybe Maya chose better manners than speak ill of a guest. The reprimand was mild, but even moonlight couldn't hide how Ephraim flushed. Zeke climbed down, offered Marlies a hand. She refused. Out of reflex, then regretted it when her skirt snagged the footboard. She landed stiff, ankles wobbling. Fisher hopped down after her, protective air already forming. Jonah's gaze swept from her torn hem to the bruises blooming where rope had bitten. His eyes softened a fraction. Spare rooms upstairs still have beds, he told his father. Sheets'll need airing. I'll handle it, Marlies said, surprising herself. And breakfast come dawn. Silas raised a brow. You cook? I bleed, don't I? A body can do more than one thing. A chuckle escaped Nicodemus, quickly smothered. Jonah offered a slow nod. Fair enough. Barn's yours, Fisher. Unhitch and turn the team loose in the south lot. While father and son saw to the wagon, Marley's climbed porch steps that groaned like hulled ships. Inside, lamplight revealed a house built for sturdiness rather than charm-wide pine floors. Plank walls scrubbed clean, deer racks over the hearth, yet a vase of wild asters sat on a sideboard. Someone cared enough for beauty. She found the spare room. At the hall's end, mattresses stuffed with straw, quilt folded crisp. She lit a stub candle, fingers trembling, mind racing through what tomorrow might demand. The weight of 7 unknown tempers, plus a widower's ghosts. She smoothed the quilt, discovering careful stitching. Initials A.L., the late Abigail Langford. As dawn's pale blush seeped through curtains. Fatigue pressed like iron. She lowered to the bed fully clothed, candle guttering in the dish nearby. Sleep hovered, but refused to land. Questions prowled. Asterisk, could she become anchor in a storm of men? Could she trust a family who bought a woman at auction? Did Zeke expect obedience or partnership? She closed her eyes, letting the mattress rocking. Horse her toward unconsciousness. A gunshot cracked outside. She jolted, heart leaping, candle snuffing itself in wax. Boots thundered along the porch. Shouts erupted, Jonah barking orders, dogs snarling. Another shot, closer this time, rattled window panes. Marley's lunged to the sill. Flames licked the eastern pasture beyond the barn's orange teeth, gnawing dry grass. Silhouettes on horseback wheeled against firelight, rifles flashing. The bedroom door burst wide. Fisher stood panting, eyes huge. Pa says stay down, but, another report split the dark chipping paint from the shutter near Marlis's cheek. She dragged Fisher to the floor, pulse pounding louder than the cattle's bellows. Outside, chaos surged, the stench of kerosene. Panicked ball of livestock, sons shouting each other's names across burning fields. Something heavy slammed the porch rail. Timber cracked. Marlis's breath came ragged. She wasn't a prisoner now, she was family under siege. And family, she realized, fought back. She crawled toward the trunk at the closet's foot, praying. It held more than linens. Praying the courage she'd feigned on the auction block hadn't deserted her at the first roar of gunfire. Hinges screamed as she flung the lid. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, lay an old Spencer carbine and a box of shells. Her hand shook as she loaded the rifle. Click, slide, thud, the sound of past decisions catching up. Boots pounded in the hallway. Jonah skidded to the doorway, revolver in one hand, lantern in the other. His gaze locked on the weapon cradled against her shoulder. Can you shoot? He demanded. Only what I aim at. He tossed her a cartridge belt. Porch rails gone. We'll hold the parlor windows, stay low. As Marlies followed him through smoke-filled corridors, adrenaline drowned fear. Somewhere below the din of gunfire and crackling grass, she felt a strange surge purpose, fierce and undeniable. Asterisk if. Thorn Gap had tried to break her, asterisk she thought. Stillwater Creek might just make her. The parlor window shattered as rifle slugs punched through. She swung the Spencer out the jagged opening, sighting a rider haloed by fire. For one heartbeat the world froze, hooves suspended, sparks floating. The rider's eyes meeting hers across 40 yards of burning night. She squeezed the trigger. The rider jerked back, horse rearing. Shadows swallowed them both, before she could chamber another round. A flaming arrow arced overhead, embedding the porch roof. Heat blossomed, boards crackled, sparks rained. Jonah swore, grabbing a bucket. Ephraim, Ezekiel, get water to the eaves. In the yard, Zeke's voice thundered commands while cattle bellowed in terror. The barn doors slammed open, silhouettes herding animals toward the creek. Somewhere to the north, a woman screamed goats. Corrals, more flames. Marley's fired again, then again, each recoil driving bruises deeper. The Spencer's barrel glowed. Smoke clawed her throat. Still she shot. A sudden lull, enemy riders regrouping. Jonah slapped her shoulder. Reload! There. Circling. She fumbled fresh cartridges, fingers slick with sweat. Fisher slid beside her with a water bucket, trying to douse sparks in her hair. Out on the field, the fire lines curved inward, herd trapped between flames and rifles. Zeke wheeled his mount, silhouetted crimson, shouting but lost to the roar. A stranger rode out of the smoke toward him, rifle leveled. Marley's felt the world narrow to that single rider. That single trigger pull an instant from ending the man who'd bought her freedom. She slammed the Spencer's lever, lifted the sight, exhaled, and the parlor floor exploded. Boards gave way under hidden weight, plunging her and Fisher through a tangle of splinters into the cellar below. Darkness swallowed them. The rifle slipped from numb hands. Above, the roar of flames surged. Footsteps hammered. Someone screamed her name. She lay on cold earth, side aching, lungs burning, ears ringing with distant gunfire and the sonorous beat of her own blood. Somewhere overhead, the house she had. Meant to turn into a home-battled inferno and bullets. Asterisk Marley's Keen, she thought. Asterisk 5-cent girl of Thorn Gap, what have you done? Asterisk, and then, as smoke drifted through the shattered floor and cinders fell like cruel snow, everything went quiet, too quiet. Asterisk, asterisk, before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Asterisk, asterisk. Too quiet. Silence settled in the crawlspace like a living thing. Thick as cellar dust. Heavier than the charred beams groaning overhead. Marley's Keen lay on her back in cooling ashes, lungs sawing smoke-tainted air, heartbeat drumming somewhere behind her eyes. Fisher Langford's small, shaking hand still clutched her sleeve, though he'd stopped whispering half-words of panic once the crash settled. Quiet now, not the hush of safety, but the suffocating pause before a rattlesnake strikes again. She blinked, the world swam. Moonlight, firelight, and lantern spill filtered through the jagged hole above, outlining beams that dangled like snapped ribs. Soot drifted down in lazy spirals, a snow globe of catastrophe. Somewhere beyond the shattered flooring, she heard the Langford twins shouting bucket commands, the rush of water sloshing, the distant bawl of terrified cattle. But right here, in the smothered cellar, the only sound was Fisher's quivering breath and the muted roar of blood in her own ears. Move, Marley's. Thought first, then action. She rolled onto her side, wincing when a plank edge protested against bruised ribs. Pain flared downward hip, thigh, knee, but nothing felt broken. Fisher shifted too, a whimper escaping before he clamped his jaw. You hurt? She whispered. No, maybe. He hugged his skinny arm tight. Think something bit me on the drop. Feels hot. She groped in darkness, found the boy's forearm. Blood slicked under her fingertips, shallow but long. She tore a strip from her petticoat hem, fixed a bandage one-handed while her ears strained for bootsteps above. None came. Flames still crackled, but the gunfire had stalled. The attackers regrouped or retreated, which meant they might try a final rush once the house weakened. Pa's gonna think we're crushed. Fisher's voice wobbled. He'll come down looking, get himself shot. Not if we climb out first. She located the Spencer carbine a yard away, barrel hot, magazine half spent, then found the cartridge belt. She looped it across Fisher's uninjured shoulder, pressed the rifle into his palms. Know how to load? He nodded like a drowning colt. Nicodemus taught me last winter shootin' fence posts. Good. Keep it pointed low until I say. She rose into a crouch. The cellar stretched beneath the entire parlor-piled crates of canned peaches, rusty plows, root vegetables wilting in bins. At the far wall, Lamplight seeped through lath where someone once considered a storm exit, then never finished. Wind curled through those cracks now, bringing fresher air, Marley's. Angled that way, testing each step. Above, floorboards wheezed, sagging under bodies. Or simple collapse. Hard to tell. She signaled Fisher forward. They skirted a broken pickle jar whose vinegar stung the air, then a crate of lead shot. A tin bucket lay overturned like a toy at. The wall she found the half-framed doorway. Boards pried, but not removed. She ran the shoulder. Pine split with a muffled crunch. Beyond, packed earth slanted upward. An old escape tunnel? Or root cellar vent? Either way, it pointed toward the east pasture and hopefully unguarded night. She started crawling. Fisher followed, dragging the rifle. Dirt showered their hair. The tunnel smelled of clay and lost seasons. 10 feet in, she tasted cold, dew-fresh outdoor air. She pushed a final board loose and tumbled onto hillside grass slick with ash, still water. Creek Ranch lay before them in ruinous tableau. Fire licked the western eaves of the barn, but the house blaze had been partially smothered. Silhouettes tossed water while someone hacked burning shingles free. In the south paddock, the older brothers herded cattle away from flames, rifle barrels glinting. But to the north, along the tree-cut ridge, she counted 5 mounted shapes regrouping beneath cottonwoods rifles resting on saddlebows, lanterns. Doused, waiting. The man at their head sat tall, coat flapping over a left arm bound in sling. She recognized him from the parlor window, a rider she'd shot, though only grazed. Now his right arm swung commanding gestures toward the ranch yard. He pointed 2 men downslope on foot, then spurred another east to flank, organized, intent. Fisher muttered, "That's Catlin Kane. Worked for Pay Ayers back before Maya died. Got fired for drinkin', shootin' at coyotes near the well. Kane knew enemy, old grudge. He aimed to break the Langfords where Bullet hadn't, by burning livelihood and stock, then maybe finishing the family after exhaustion set in. And she'd handed him advantage by falling through a floor. Stay low, Marley's whispered. We skirt the orchard, circle to the smokehouse, rally who we can. They belly crawled through buffalo grass wet with creek spray, then dashed tree to tree. Flames painted their backs red. Wind carried sparks overhead. Twice Marley's froze as hoofbeats shifted nearer, but Kane's men still assumed everyone was inside the house. Good dot at the smokehouse, Jonah. Silas and Bartram slumped behind barrels ammunition, nearly spent, shirts black with soot. Jonah's eyes widened seeing them alive. Relief collided with equal panic. Pa kept searching the rubble, he said between coughs. Thought you 2 squashed. Tell him we're ghost later, Marley's answered. Right now Kane's circling. North, 3 mounted, 2 on foot. He'll hit the paddock fence next. Drive cattle through the creek where fire can't chase him. Silas peered through barrel gaps. Kane? He wouldn't dare. He's daring plenty. She snatched Jonah's empty canteen, swigged. Welcomed water. Need a plan before his next push. Jonah studied her, this 5-cent stranger issuing tactics, but nodded. Bartram, fetch Nicodemus from South Lot. Silas, round the twins. We meet behind tool shed in 2 minutes. Fisher stays with me. Fisher stiffened. I can fight. You will, Marley's assured. But first refill the water lines. While the brothers scattered, Marley's faced Jonah under flickering torchlight. His beard hid tension lines. His rifle barrel shook from fatigue. Yet his eyes, dark as cedar bark, held steady on hers. Say it, she prompted. He exhaled. I didn't. Want Pa bringing home another mouth. Thought you trouble we'd have to feed. And now? Trouble fights shoulder to shoulder, he said, almost smiling. Sirens of memory flared auction laughter echoing Thorn Gap Street, yet she tamped them down. We hold until dawn, she said. Burning stops once dew rises. Cain's men are few and tired. They'll risk one more strike. We break it. They scatter. How? She scanned ranch layout. Barn fires overshadow paddock. Orchard forms cross cover. Creek bed offers ambush. Draw them toward orchard, she murmured. Split force. Cut off retreat. Need a spark bigger than barn to bait them. Jonah's gaze flicked to the hay wagon half hidden near corn crib, still loaded with loose straw soaked from firefight buckets. He grunted, bait sit and ready. Push it downhill, light it halfway. Marley's ripped sleeve cloth, doused it with lamp oil, knotted around a stick. Torch, on my signal. Minutes later 8 Langfords crouched behind the wagon, wheels chocked with stones on hillside above orchard. Flames at the barn had shrunk under Nicodemus's frantic bucket line. House glowed ember red, but no longer roaring. Quiet again, the awful hush before last assault. Across the paddock, Cain's men advanced, dismounted 3 rifles, 2 pistols figures, bent like wolves stalking corral gate. Cain remained mounted on ridge to oversee. He hadn't seen wagon. Faces hidden by orchard shadows, Marley's inhaled smoke-laced air. Her ears rang. Fingers trembled, but purpose steadied them. Push on 3, Jonah whispered. 1. The brothers braced shoulders to wood. Fisher gripped Spencer in one hand, torch in the other, waiting. 2. Nicodemus muttered prayer. Silas flexed. Burned palms. 3. Stones removed. Wagon lunged downslope, rattling. Fisher struck torch on wheel rim, wick igniting. As wagon gathered speed, Jonah sliced haystring, straw billowing out, catching sparks. Orange tongues leapt, devouring. Dry fodder. The wagon became a meteor, streaking toward Cain's skirmish line. Men shouted. Pistols fired wildly. The Langfords sprinted after, flanking fireball, rifles raised. Cain's front shooters dove aside. The wagon hurtled between them, crashed into corral fence and funnel of embers. Boards exploded. Cattle bawled stampede cries. Now! Marley's roared. Like a net drawing closed, brothers poured rifle and shotgun fire at Cain's scattered men. Silas downed 1 gunman with buckshot across thigh. Ephraim tackled another swinging a pistol, fists hammering until weapon clattered free. Nicodemus used a branding iron plucked from forge coals to whip a rider's legs, dragging him from saddle. Marley's sprinted toward Cain. He sat astride a roan mare near orchard edge, pistol raised, scanning chaos for leadership target. She skidded behind a pecan trunk, breath ragged. End this, she told herself, before more fire, more blood. She peeked. Cain's sling arm hindered control. Pistol wavered. She chambered Spencer, leaned, sight steady, but moon slipped behind. Smoke cloud. Silhouette blurred. Shot wrist hitting panicked cattle. Hoofbeats pounded behind. Jonah rode Fisher's pony bareback, twin carbines slung. He veered, eyes asking permission. She signaled left flank. Jonah charged Cain, bullets whipping bark. Cain fired back. Muzzle flash lit rider grimace. Jonah ducked low on pony's neck, carbine barking, grazing Cain's thigh. Cain cursed, wheeled roan. Marley's repositioned, but as she aimed, the ground trembled. Cattle stampede funneled toward creek gap blown in corral fence. Scores of horns and hooves thundered, dust rogue. Cain spurred past them, galloping north. Toward tree line. Ephraim, Nicodemus. Cut off the herd. Jonah yelled while circling to rejoin fight. Marley's leapt a ditch, sprinted after Cain though distance widened. He disappeared into cottonwoods. She slowed, lungs ripping, rifle heavy. In dusk gray grove, creek gurgled. Twigs snapped to her right. She pivoted, finger light on trigger. Nothing, just wind. Then cold metal pressed her nape. Drop it, girl. Cain's voice rasped behind like rusted steel. She froze. He must have looped around as she entered trees. She eased rifle down. Noble of you. Feeding a fire I sat. He kicked her calf. She stumbled to knees. Zeke stole my wage years back. Abby stole his heart. Now I steal everything left. You steal ashes, she rasped. Langfords'll sell land after tonight. Tuck tails. But first, grief. He yanked her braid, forcing head back. Starting with you. Footstep. Cain cursed, wheeled roan. Marley's repositioned, but as she aimed, the ground trembled. Cattle stampede funneled toward creek gap blown in corral fence. Scores of horns and hooves thundered, dust rogue. Cain spurred past them, galloping north. Toward tree line. Ephraim, Nicodemus. Cut off the herd. Jonah yelled while circling to rejoin fight. Marley's leapt a ditch, sprinted after Cain though distance widened. He disappeared into cottonwoods. She slowed, lungs ripping, rifle heavy. In dusk gray grove, creek gurgled. Twigs snapped to her right. She pivoted, finger light on trigger. Nothing, just wind. Then cold metal pressed her nape. Drop it, girl. Cain's voice rasped behind like rusted steel. She froze. He must have looped around as she entered trees. She eased rifle down. Noble of you. Feeding a fire I sat. He kicked her calf. She stumbled to knees. Zeke stole my wage years back. Abby stole his heart. Now I steal everything left. You steal ashes, she rasped. Langfords'll sell land after tonight. Tuck tails. But first, grief. He yanked her braid, forcing head back. Starting with you. Footsteps crunched. Fisher burst inside clearing. Spencer leveled. Let her go, Cain laughed. Kid tries again. Lower the toy, for you shoot her by mistake. Fisher's arms quaked. Barrel wagged. Tears gleamed. I'm not a kid. His voice small but fierce. Sure, Cain cocked hammer. Leave or die watching. Marlis's mind raced distance to rifle. Too far, Cain's sling encumbered. But kill range short. Could she duck? Maybe as Fisher fired. Risk not, she locked eyes with boy. Slight nod, trust. Fisher inhaled slow, barrel steadied. Marley's jerked suddenly sideways, throwing weight against Cain's injured arm. He roared, shot cracked sky. Pine needles showered. Fisher fired near simultaneously. Bullet tore Cain's shooting hand. Gun flew. Marley's twisted free, punched elbow to his jaw. He staggered. She dove, grabbed fallen pistol, swung hard, striking temple. Cain collapsed, blood blooming. Fisher stood frozen, Spencer smoldering, face pale. She rose, pulling him into hug. You're no kid. Behind them, more hooves. Jonah, Silas arrived, weapons drawn. They disarmed Cain, bound him with harness leather. Jonah clapped Fisher's shoulder, wordless pride. A howl rose over fields, Bartram's victory signal. Attackers rooted, but dawn still distant. Fires smoldered, cattle scattered. Langfords faced long hours saving what remained. Sun climbed eventually, revealing ruin edge under golden light. Barn roof collapsed in one corner. 3 milk cows lost, orchard singed. Yet house still stood. Jonah navigated blackened porch. Boards, calling counts. All heads present, injuries light. Marley sat on stump, Fisher beside, both wrapped in quilts. Zeke approached, hat off, exhaustion lining face. They say you pulled him from cellar, rallied defense, he said. Quietly. Took Cain down yourself. Fisher shot the hand, she corrected. Zeke's gaze softened toward son. Brave work. To her, he added, debt I can't calculate. No debt, she replied, voice hoarse. Family rope spins both. Ways, he reached into coat, produced 5-cent piece, laid it on her palm. Price paid was wrong measure. Keep it to remember you're priceless henceforth. She closed fingers around coin. Heat rose behind eyes. She nodded once. Across yard, Sheriff Ryder's posse arrived from Cedar Hollow, having seen night blaze. Deputies hauled Cain and survivors. Business of justice began, yet justice seldom heals scars. As afternoon waned, storm clouds brewed, promising rain upon charred ground. Jonah worked to rebuild Corral Gate. Marley's joined, hammering nails. He handed her cedar plank etched with letters burned by branding iron. Still water stands. They lashed it above new gate. Wind caught it, sign creaking. Thunder rumbled beyond foothills. She inhaled petrichor, felt bruises sing. Tomorrow they'd bury lost calves, tally barn timbers, start over. But tonight, maybe stew simmered in half-intact kitchen. Maybe laughter found cracks amid sorrow. She'd sit at long table, coin in pocket, listening to brothers debate whose shot saved which steer. And later, alone by lantern, she might open ledger, sketch new plans expanding orchard, fencing creek bend, school lesson lists for Fisher. Dreams fragile as new leaves after wildfire. She pressed palm to signs fresh grain. Still water stands. A scream ripped from house. Nicodemus burst onto porch, face white. Pa, Jonah, Fisher. The marshal ain't moving. Doc says he needs the silver vial medicine only Pa got locked in gun safe. Zeke spun. Safe's in cellar behind burned floor, Jonah cursed. Fire reignited in parlor rafters, flames thick, paths blocked. Marley's felt world tilt. After everything, one ember threatened to steal patriarch. And the medicine only she knew path through crawl space. Tunnel exit now collapsed by stampede. She grabbed water sack, rope. I'll go, Zeke seized her arm. Floor's ready to fall, then I'll ride the fall. She met his gaze storm. And iron, still water stands, remember? Without waiting, she sprinted for house, smoke billowing from windows, roof crackling anew. Brothers shouted behind, but she dove through doorway into choking heat. Boards groaned, flames licked ceiling. She dropped to knees, crawled toward cellar hole she'd escaped hours before, yet fire consumed edges, beams sagging like jaws ready to devour. Hold, she prayed to wood and nail. Just hold. She reached lip, coughed, eyes burning. Below, cellar glowed orange. Safe gleamed at far wall behind crates. She tied rope to hearth anchor, wrapped cloth over mouth, and began lowering herself into furnace-lit dark. Halfway down, beam above split with deafening crack ceiling starting to cave. Sparks rained. She swung feet searching purchase. Smoke. Blinded. Fingers slipped. Rope burned palms. She fell the remaining 8 feet, landing hard on cold grit. Pain shot ankle. Flames danced along ceiling hole, dropping embers. She scrambled to safe, spun dial. Zeke had told combination while stitching his arm. *3 right. 2 left, 1 right. Metal thunked open. Inside, silver vial cushioned in velvet. Abigail's initials engraved. She snatched it, shoved into bodice. Overhead, joists shrieked. Exit rope swayed free, burned through. No going up. She limped to tunnel, but opening crushed by wagon debris earlier. Earth smelled of singe. Trap. Heat built. She eyed crates lead shot, canned peaches. An idea sparked as fierce as blaze. Blasting pathway with powder keg stored near forge. Supplies. She recalled seeing barrel earlier when crawling out. She dragged it now, sweat stinging eyes. Tore fuse from lantern wick, jammed in bunghole. Spark ready. But ignite and she might be torn apart if shelter not found. She spotted the iron bathtub used for dyeing hides, leaned against wall. Thick cast iron sides might shield blast. No time for doubt. She positioned barrel against collapsed. Tunnel boards, lit fuse with ember, then dove for tub. Pulling lid of oak slats over top. Inside absolute dark, heart hammered. Seconds dragged, she counted. *1, 2. Blast ripped cellar. Thunderclap ear, splitting, world tilting. Tub lurched, dirt showered, air whooshed hot, then still. She coughed, ears ringing. Lid slid off, Stillwater stands, and so would she. The words echoed in Marley's Keen's dreams like a hammer tonging an anvil. Each toll brought a flash of memory. Flames licking the rafters, the roar of a powder keg, Jonah's arms catching her as rain washed ember from her hair. Then the clang faded, and darkness folded her deeper dot in that darkness. She wandered a landscape stitched together from youth and nightmare. Thorn Gap's auction block jutted from scorched Stillwater soil. Her stepfather's drunken laugh drifted on the wind, merging with Catelyn Kane's taunts, with Sarah Langford's ghost soft singing, with the brittle crack of Zeke's rifle. 7 silhouettes: Jonah, Silas, Bartram, Ephraim, Ezekiel, Nicodemus. Fisher loomed atop a ridge, torches aloft. Behind them, the ranch house burned, flames painting the night like hell's own tapestry. Marley's tried to run toward them, but her feet stuck in ash. The harder she pulled, the deeper she sank. A wolf's howl split the hush, and her eyes snapped open. Moonlight through cotton curtains painted bars across the ceiling. She lay in the spare room she had claimed her first. Night, though the ceiling planks above her head were now smoke-stained and warped. Rain pattered outside steady but gentle, tapping rhythm against tin roof. The smell of wet cedar and scorched pine lingered like half-forgotten incense. She tried to sit. Breath hitched. Her ankle, sprained in the cellar fall, throbbed. Bruises across ribs protested every movement. Hands swaddled in salve-soaked bandages stung as she flexed fingers. But everything moved. Everything hurt, yet nothing felt beyond repair. On the knitstand stood a kerosene lamp turned low. Someone had placed a cup of willow bark tea beside it, steam curling slowly. A note lay folded beneath the saucer, written in Jonah's precise hand. * sleep while you can. Doc says the fever broke. Zeke rode into Simmerhorn to telegraph Marshal North about new prisoners. Fisher sits porch watch. We start corral repairs at dawn. If you wake, holler. * she let the note fall shut. Dawn could not be far sliver of gold on horizon. Her flesh craved more rest, but the ranch would wake to labor soon. And work she had. Learned was the surest balm for nightmares. She eased feet to the floor, hissed when ankle protested, then rocked weight until she could stand. A cane and actual walking stick of polished yew leaned against dresser. She smiled, Fisher's doing, no doubt. Using it, she hobbled to the window. Stillwater Creek Valley shimmered under breaking dawn. Storm clouds dragged purple bellies eastward, leaving washed clean air that smelled like renewal. Smoke still curled from barn ruins, but flames no longer licked sky. Paddock fences lay smashed where cattle had crashed through, yet most of the herd grazed in far pasture, silhouettes peaceful. The orchard, blackened at edges, still held green at core. And the house, though skin-scarred, stood upright. Stillwater stands. She whispered the phrase, tasted its grit and promise on her tongue. Outside, bootsteps creaked along porch. She peered out to see Fisher perched on rail, blanket across shoulders. Spencer rifle propped beside. He whittled a stick, face pale but focused. Rain droplets glittered on his hair. She raised sash. "Morning, marksman," he startled, then grinned. "Doc said you'd sleep clear till noon." Doc underestimated. "How my stomach nags," she sniffed air. "Smell flapjacks?" "Nicodemus cookin' before fence duty. He'll burn 'em sure if no one stirs batter." She chuckled, then coughed when ribs pinched. "Not if we rescue breakfast." "Keep watch, I'll rattle pans." She dressed clean calico dress Jonah had left over trunk, sleeves rolled to accommodate. Bandage wraps. Kane kissed raw skin as she buttoned bodice. Last she hung the silver vial on ribbon around neck, tucking beneath collar. Doc had emptied medicine. Still it felt talismanic. Hallway smelled of lye and wet wood. Someone had mopped soot but stains clung. She limped downstairs, cane tapping. Parlor was roped off by sawhorses, floorboards caved. hole gaping into cellar. They'd laid planks as walkway toward kitchen. In kitchen, Nicodemus battled batter lumps with oversized spoon, tongue peeking at corner of mouth. Bartram fed the cast-iron stove, bare chest cross-hatched by scratches where he'd wrangled stampeding heifers. "Look who's ghosted up," Bartram boomed. "Thought we'd be spooning gruel down your throat." Marley stole spoon. "You'll spoon nothing but trouble if you scorch flapjacks. Step aside." Nicodemus surrendered pan gratefully. She stoked flame, poured batter circles. The simple rhythm soothed. Smell of browning flour and sweet molasses filled air. One by one, brothers drifted in, summoned by aroma. Silas sporting sling for bruised shoulder. Ephraim limping on bandaged thigh. Twins Ezekiel and Ephraim sporting singed eyebrows. They ringed table, mugs of chicory coffee steaming. Conversation hushed when she slid first plate to center. Jonah entered last, wiping hands on rag. Dirt streaked his jaw. He'd already inspected corral damage at first light. Eyes met hers, flickered concern, and something warmer. "Good to see you upright," he said. She flipped a cake. "Upright's a start. Give me 2 days. I'll be chasing fence posts with the rest." Zeke rode in after they'd eaten, coat dripping morning drizzle. The room stilled as he removed hat, revealing exhaustion beyond sleeplessness, burden of decisions carved anew. "Telegraph sent," he announced, voice thick. "Marshal North rides from Summit Falls with deputy posse tomorrow. Kane, his 6 will travel under guard. Sheriff Ryder left sentinel." He scanned sons, saw them chewing quietly, then looked to Marley's. "Folks in Simmerhern talk about raising purse, a reward for your nerve." She shook head. "Put it toward new barn roof. Or orchard saplings." He studied her a long beat, then nodded. "As you wish." Jonah cleared throat. "We'll MEND south fence today. Drive herd back before dusk. Need someone tally supplies, nails, rail lengths, kerosene stock." "I'll tally," Marley's offered. Zeke frowned. "You'll rest." "I can rest with pencil in hand," she countered. Besides, ranch ledger's a battlefield of its own, columns bleeding into margins. Bartram snorted. "She's not wrong." Zeke raised palms. "Very well. Ledger's behind counter in old study. Take account, but mind ankle." She tapped. "Kane, yes, sire." By noon, clouds parted, sun plastering moist ground with steam. Ranch bustled, saws keening, hammers striking, cattle lowing as they funneled through repaired gates. Marley's positioned herself on porch bench with ledger, ink pot, homemade crutch propped. Fisher ran supply counts, shouting numbers she noted. The routine tamed chaos. While they worked, settlers from neighboring claims rode in offering aid. Mrs. Craddock from Daisy Bluff arrived with wagon of quilts. Pastor Elijah Fitch brought congregation youth to help clear debris. 2 creek riders delivered sack of feed corn for when soil's ready. Marley's marked each donation, writing thank you. Notes for Fisher to distribute. She watched guilt lines ease on Zeke's face as community rallied. Stillwater's stand spurred solidarity. By afternoon, Doc Green declared Marshal McAllister out of danger, though he'd remain bedridden a week. The news lifted weight on all. But not all weight. While most townsfolk praised Langford's, rumors sprouted. Kane had allies yet free. Some swore they'd seen smoke signals on High Mesa at dawn, sign of bigger gang mustering. Marshal North's arrival couldn't come quick enough. That evening, as pink sunset spread, Jonah asked Marley's to walk orchard perimeter, ankle permitting, inspecting damage. She accepted, craving breeze and distance from hammer clatter. They strolled among charred trunks, some trees black to marrow, others only singed bark. Jonah carried bucket of pine tar, daubing wounds to save what could heal. Hard to watch them suffer. He muttered, stroking sap seep. "Ma planted most. Fire test roots," Marley said. "Those deep won't falter." She tapped scorched trunk. Beneath, cambium still green. See? Life hides under scar. He eyed her, gratitude glinting. You speak like preacher and blacksmith together. She laughed, gentle. Preacher gave me Sunday scraps of learning. Blacksmith gave me hammer for troubles. They reached far edge where orchard dipped to willow grove. Creek murmured below. Jonah sat on boulder, gesturing her to rest. Crickets chirped early. For minutes they watched swallows loop golden sky. Comfortable hush. Then Jonah's voice, low. Night of attack, I feared Pa's judgment bringing you here. Thought maybe he'd traded coin for one more wound, she answered after breath. He did trade. But wound will heal. She tapped silver. Vial through dress. He traded for future. Jonah rubbed calloused palm across jeans. That future, it includes staying? Not just as ledger keeper. Her pulse quickened. She studied Creek's glimmer. You mean staying longer than harvest? I mean roots, his tone careful. Boys lost May 5 winters past. House grew quiet. Pa buried self in cattle. We buried selves in toil. Then you appear, shotgun smoke still clearing, and Fisher laughs again. Even Bartram listened at breakfast for once. Embers flared in her chest, flattery or something deeper. She set Cain aside. I was bought, Jonah. Might not sit right with town if widows' sons court the goods their father purchased. He flushed. Ain't courtin'. A beat. Yet, just asking if choice is yours. She picked sprig of sage, twirled. Choice hasn't been mine, ever, but maybe coin changed that. She opened palm. Tiny 5-cent piece rested warm. Until I choose, I hold this. He smiled, slow like sunrise. Then hold careful, and know you got place. She tucked coin away, heart steady. Place sounds better than price. R. Seems so, he beamed. Good, house needed story. She tapped board. Story spelled slowly. Now copy. He complied, tongue poking. She ruffled hair. But peace seldom stays. That afternoon, Nicodemus galloped from Simmerhern bearing. Letter sealed with scarlet wax. Crowd gathered at porch while Zeke slid envelope. He read, jaw clenched. Bad? Jonah asked. Zeke folded carefully. Judge Caldwell fell ill. Trial moved to High Ridge Court Railway Hub 2 days south. Word says Cain's kin hired Black Spur riders to intercept escort. Ephraim whistled low. Black Spur, they got stage lines for sport. Fisher gripped Marlis's arm. They'll break him out. Zeke met Jonah's gaze. Need volunteer to ride with Marshal Northguard escort. All sons spoke at once. He raised hand. Jonah leads. One other. Silas stepped forward. Shoulder healed. He rotated arm. Rifle. Ready. The rest guard ranch, Zeke ordered. Spur may raid to draw us off. He turned to Marley's. Keep house, ledger, supplies. Fisher stays. Fisher protested. Zeke's eyes softened. We need eyes sharp here. That night, Marley's packed provisions for Jonah and Silas. Jerky. Ammo, laudanum. In barn she found Jonah saddling Ronmar. Firelight from lantern etched muscles as he cinched girth. She approached. Brought cartridges, he accepted. Thank you. Silence, heavy with words unsaid. Be careful, she murmured. He tied pouch to saddle. I'll return. He turned, paused, then pressed small object into her hand. She opened. Sprig of blooming milkweed, petals white. Hope, he said simply. She swallowed past tight throat. Come back before it wilts. He smiled lopsided. I intend to. He swung into saddle. Silas mounted beside, torch raised. They trotted through gate, silhouettes merging with night. Marley's watched until darkness swallowed them, then pressed flower in the ledger pages where future plans waited. Morning roused with restless wind. Fisher busied chores, but shot glances. To horizon, twins patrolled fence lines. Zeke rode perimeters alone at dusk, silent. On third day without word, unsettled hush blanketed ranch. Marley's awoke pre-dawn to Fisher pounding stairs. "Rider coming," he yelled. "Fast." She threw. Shawl hobbled porch. A lone horse galloped ragged Silas. No smaller frame, wounded slump. As silhouette neared, they recognized Deputy Harrow, part of escort. Horse lathered, deputy swaying. They caught reins. He slid, collapsing. Blood-soaked waist. Ambush, Black Spur, Ledger, Kane free, Jonah captured. Words cracked as he fainted, shock rippled. Zeke's face turned stone. "Doc," he roared. Marley's knelt, pressing cloth to wound. Heart thundered. Jonah, a prisoner. Brothers. Fate now knotted with Kane. New enemy Black Spur riders loomed. Zeke barked orders. "Ephraim, Nicodemus ready mounts. Bartram fetch extra rifles. We ride within hour." "And ranch?" Ezekiel asked. "Spur busy fleeing south. Ranch safe." But Marley's heard faint whistle of looming threat. Black Spur rumored legion. Might retaliate here once Langfords pursue. She rose, Kane steady. "I'll guard Homestead with Twins and Fisher." Zeke glanced. "You sure?" She met his gaze iron. "Stillwater stands." He nodded curt, then strode to barn. As horses thundered out. Marley's assembled defense. Posted Fisher in orchard. Twins atop barn loft with long rifles. Prepared signal fires, loaded Spencer anew. Dusk settled purple. Wind gusts carried scents of distant sage and faint sulfur. Twins scanned hills. "Riders," Ephraim muttered. "Northridge." Through spyglass, Marley's counted 6 silhouettes creeping along Crescouts perhaps. She exhaled. The enemy hadn't fled. They'd circled. Night crept. Moon hid behind clouds. She stationed herself at parlor's repaired window, lantern doused. Memories of last siege flickered, but found no fear, only focus. Hours passed. Crickets hush. Suddenly, a flare erupted on Ridge's signal. Hoofbeats thundered across flats 10. Maybe 12 riders charging gate. Twins fired first volley. 2 horses stumbled. Riders split, some galloping toward barn, others house. Shots cracked, glass shattered again. Marley's crouched behind overturned table, return firing at shadows. Fisher. Signaled from orchard by lantern code, more coming east. High summer heat baked Stillwater Creek Valley until even larks quit singing and the grasshoppers slowed their chatter. Dust rose in lazy spirals off wagon ruts and hung between hills like a veil too tired to lift. July had arrived with iron. Shoes. And every step rattled the bones of those who tilled the land. Yet inside the Langford ranch house the air buzzed with purpose. 2 months had passed since the Black Spur ambush and the rescue at Pronghorn Gorge, weeks of mending fences, rewiring telegraph lines, and coaxing scorched earth back to life. The scars of fire still marked the barn's northwest corner, and bullet holes pock-marked porch pillars, but new lumber gleamed golden where old had burned. The orchard bore tiny green fruit despite charred trunks. Fisher measured each peach like a proud midwife. Marley's Keen stood at the long pine table, in what had once been the formal parlor and now served as a planning hall. Ledger books, survey maps, and seed catalogs fanned out like a general's campaign charts. Sun from the east window warmed her shoulders, though sweat already beaded at her collar despite dawn's early hour. She tapped a pencil against the margin of a fresh page, then underlined a column headed Autumn Provisions Needed. "Buckwheat seed, 200 weight," she murmured, watching ink glisten. "Salt pork, 1 barrel, mineral salt for the north pasture." Jonah Langford leaned over her shoulder, arms folded. The lingering bruise on his left cheek had faded to pale yellow, but a new pink scar traced from brow to temple, a gift from Kane's men at the gorge. He wore it the way other men wore wedding bands, a reminder that life's vows were forged in fire. "Add kerosene," he suggested. "Last month used near all fighting brush fires," she scribbled. 2 crates. And lamp chimneys we shattered a dozen studding by nights. Jonah's grin crooked. Reckon we break more once schooling starts. At least they'll shatter learning sums, she quipped. She closed the ledger, flexing sore fingers. I'll ride to Simmerhern tomorrow for provisions. Jonah's brows knit. Alone? I'll take Fisher. He needs practice driving the buckboard. He's 13. Exactly why he needs practice now, not after he's full grown and habits set. She reached up, patting Jonah's forearm. Besides, your father requires you here for the well survey. Jonah exhaled but nodded. Marley smiled to herself. 2 months ago he would have argued harder. Now he saw her not as fragile ledger keeper, but equal, architect of Stillwater's future. A thunder of bootsteps announced the twins barreling through the foyer. Ephraim hat crooked, freckles dazzling skidded on new waxed floorboards, and nearly plowed into the table. Ezekiel followed, cheeks flushed. Telegraph writer outside, Ephraim blurted. Bryn's word from the county seat. Jonah exchanged a glance with Marley's. Telegraph from county seat these days meant only a handful of things. Trial updates about Kane, rail expansion news, or land tax assessments. None were casual. They met Zeke on the porch, where a lanky teenage messenger handed over a folded yellow slip. Sweat darkened the runner's shirt. He gulped water from a dipper Fisher offered. Zeke tore the envelope, brows furrowing as he scanned. Well, Jonah prompted. Zeke passed the note. Judge Caldwell recovered. Circuit Court reconvenes in 3 weeks. Kane's transport scheduled for Red Mesa Penitentiary. Marley's stomach tightened. Transport? Another escort? Rail this time, Zeke replied, voice heavy. Federal marshals from Santa Fe to accompany. Black Spur won't like that, Jonah muttered, nor will Kane's kin. Silas stepped onto porch, shotgun resting in the crook of his arm. His shoulders bore fresh sunburn, testament to days in the hayfield. Zeke folded the message. Marshal. North requests we testify in Santa Fe before the train departs. Wants to record depositions under seal. That's 4 days' ride, Marley's counted. And harvest barely begun, Silas shrugged. Can't ignore summons. Law did its share. Zeke glanced at Marley's. I'll ride with Jonah and Nicodemus. Resthold Ranch. She swallowed hesitation. Memories of ambush flickered, but statement had to stand. I'll prepare documents tonight. Take sworn ledgers for cattle losses, property damage. Jonah squeezed her hand. I'll write personal account. Fisher piped up, eyes wide. Can I? No, said 3 voices together. He wilted but accepted. The next morning dawned pink and tender. Dew framed each grass blade in crystal. Marley's and Fisher loaded the buckboard with empty grain sacks, 2 barrels for kerosene, and a folded list nearly as long as the wagon bed. Zeke, Jonah, and Nicodemus saddled for Santa Fe. Bedrolls tight at the gate. Fisher tugged Marley's sleeve. Look, on the horizon, dust plumes hinted at riders. She shaded her eyes, heart skipping, but recognized the easy lope of ranchers from Oaks Bend, bringing steers for branding. Still, caution had become marrow deep. Stay alert, she advised. Clucking the mare forward, they rattled down the eastward road lined with rabbit brush and blooming yucca. Fisher sat straight on the bench, reins in white-knuckled grip. Loosen fingers, she coached. Horse feels tension. He flexed. Right, sorry. Marley's inhaled sage-scented air. How surreal that 2 months ago she'd huddled in a cellar awaiting fiery death. And now she rode open prairie in pursuit of flower and fence nails. Simmerhern bustled by midday. Railroad crews hammered spikes along new sidings. Merchants hawked peaches from wagons. Lead paint signs for White Lily Hotel and Schuyler's Emporium gleamed. Fisher reigned near Johnson & Co. Mercantile. Inside, barrel aromas, coffee, molasses, leather overwhelmed. Marley's produced ledger, dictating items to the clerk. 10 pounds saltpeter, 4 sacks flour, 2 lengths stovepipe. Fisher repeated, each learning trade arithmetic. As they waited for goods to be weighed, a hush fell across the store. Men turned toward the open doors. Marley's followed their gaze. A woman entered, tall, auburn-haired, wearing a midnight blue riding habit, too fine for Dusty Simmerhern. Satin gloves, lace collar, cameo pinned at throat. Eyes honey gold and sharp as a hawk's. A pale scar curved along her jawline, partly hidden by artful curls. She moved with the deliberate grace of someone accustomed to carving space in rooms. Dominated by men, bonneted wives whispered names Marley's didn't catch. The stranger approached the counter, unfurling a document embossed with a railroad crest. Mrs. Aurelia Van Cleef. The clerk breathed, near Boeing. Railroad. Marley's bristled. The Denver and Gulf had pressed settlers all summer, claiming rights of way. At Cutthroat Bargains. Van Cleef's voice poured like warm syrup, but held a steel spine. 20 barrels of blasting powder, 600 feet fuse, 40 dynamite sticks, packed for rail company use, delivery, end of week. Blasting powder. Marley's shivered. Railroad planned to carve new grade through Box Canyon maybe, but 40 sticks felt excessive. Van Cleef's gaze swept the store, lingering on Marley's before flicking to Fisher. A hint of curiosity, then calculation. Invoice to Spindle Spur. Rail Consortium, she said, signing with flourish. Fisher whispered, Spur. Like black spur? Different, Marley's murmured, though unease tickled. Van Cleef pocketed receipt, locked eyes with Marley's, and inclined her head in polite but hollow greeting. Marley's returned the nod. Transactions complete. Marley's guided Fisher outside. They loaded supplies, then paused at the milliner so she could acquire ribbon for Fisher's sister-in-law, when she became that, which made the boy blush. Suddenly, shouts rose from the telegraph office across the street. A clerk waved paper. Flash train derailment near Lone Gulch. Federal Marshal escort missing. Marley's froze. Jonah, Zeke, Nicodemus rode toward Santa Fe, might be near that route. Fisher paled. Crowd gathered. Clerk read, locomotive exploded after striking displaced rail. 2 dead, several injured. Gang suspected of sabotage. Federal prisoners not aboard. Relief ward with concern. Not prisoner transport yet, but sabotage signaled threat. Could be Black Spur again. Marl. I seized Fisher's shoulder. We leave. Now. She paid milliner, climbed wagon. On road home, Fisher's lips quivered. Pa and Jonah. What if? She gripped his hand. Your father's trail lies south of Lone Gulch. He'll hear news. Keep clear. She hoped. They passed Ridge, where cottonwood cast lone wide shadow. Here the world seemed hush, as if prairies inhaled, waiting to exhale calamity. They reached Stillwater by sunset, wagon dipping under new weight. Ephraim and Ezekiel rushed to unload, eyes flicking to Marley's for news. She relayed derailment report. Silas cursed softly, worry lines etching deeper. That night Marley's wrote long letter to Jonah, sealed with pressed milkweed petal, entrusted to a Pony Express rider bound south. She told herself it would find him safe. 3 days of suffocating. Heat followed. July sun hammered soil until cracks appeared like parched lips. Late afternoons the horizon quivered, mirage of water dancing just beyond reach. The orchard drooped, leaves curling though they irrigated twice a day. Cattle huddled beneath scrub mesquite. Tongues lolling, Marley spent dawn to dusk rationing water, tallying barrels, calculating flow from windmill-driven pump, inspecting leaky troughs. She concluded they had 12 days of reliable supply if no rain fell. On the 4th day, riders approached again, this time bearing Santa Fe postmarks. Zeke's party safe but delayed, rails to Santa Fe closed by sabotage. They would detour through Knife Edge Pass, returning home in a week, Knife Edge steep, landslide prone. Marley's clenched the letter until fingerprints creased paper. The same night, as Marley's pen supply orders by lantern glow, hoofbeats thundered into yard. Nicodemus burst in, hair wild. Water thieves hit Upper Spring. Dug trench diverting flow. They devised quick plan. Nicodemus and Ephraim would creep to lanterns, cut lines. Bartram stand guard. Silas and Marley's would dam trench upstream, force spring water overflow. Washing out pipeline. She and Silas lugged rocks, burlap sacks filled with dirt, stacking makeshift dam. Water pooled fast. Silas stabbed pick into trench wall. Dam burst, sending surge roaring downhill. Lanterns flickered, then vanished, a shout followed by splash. Nicodemus whooped, reappearing with pistol from one drowned worker. Scent M. Swimming, water-battered pipe supports, bending joints. Pipeline cracked, geysering. The crew abandoned wrenches, fleeing into mesquite. By dawn, spring's flow returned to still water trough. Marley sagged against rock, mud-soaked but triumphant. Back home, Fisher pumped water into orchard barrels, humming victory tune. But wind sparked bigger war. That afternoon a formal notice arrived, embossed with spindle spur's seal, greater than *** notice. Of eminent domain ***, greater than pursuant to Territorial Charter 7B. Spindle Spur Rail Consortium hereby claims water rights to Quail Ridge Spring and immediate environs, area of 20 acres. Compensation to landholder, one Ezekiel Langford, shall total $50 deemed fair market. Silas tore letter lengthwise. $50 for lifeblood? Ephraim slammed fist. Rail backed by judge in Santa Fe, we lose if we fight alone. Marley's. Paced porch, cane tapping. Then we don't fight alone. She recalled settlers from Daisy Bluff, ranchers of Oak Bend, sheep herders up the divide. All relied on independent springs threatened by same charter. She fetched ledger, open to. Blank sheet titled, Coalition for Water Sovereignty. Names followed Craddock, Fitch, Ortega. Sing. She sent Fisher galloping across valley, rallying neighbors to meeting 2 evenings hence. The gathering filled Stillwater barn. Sweet smell of new hay mixing with kerosene. Lanterns swung from rafters. Farmers, ranch wives, ranch hands, even town shopkeepers crowded benches. At front, Marley stood on upturned crate, ankle braced, silver vial glinting. I was once sold for 5 cents in bread, she began, voice ringing through barn hush. That wasn't my worth, that was my price set by a man who thought power meant owning what another needed. Tonight Spindle Spur sets our springs at $50. Tomorrow they'll set our fields at 100, our homes at 2. They will weigh us like cattle and bid low as they dare. I've learned price and worth don't match, and I will not sell again. Murmurs rose grim agreement. Pastor Fitch stepped forward. Law favors them. Marley's held up ledger. Law is paper. So is petition. So are deeds they ignore. But community is flesh and blood. If 50 sign, we force injunction hearing. If 200 sign, territorial governor must review. Craddock's grizzled husband harumphed. Governor sits behind desk 100 miles south. Then, we put Stillwater on his desk, Marley's retorted, passion flaring. We send witness accounts, photographs, produce crates dried to dust because water stolen. We send voices too loud for drawers to contain. Silence, then neighbor Sing raised hand. I sign. One by one hands lifted. Marl as passed papers. Pens scratched. Thunder rumbled outside monsoon season, creeping near. She prayed sky would wait until harvest finished. In Santa Fe, Jonah, Zeke, and Nicodemus found themselves entangled in bureaucracy. Judge Caldwell postponed depositions. Due to derailment investigation, no hotel rooms vacant. Rail refugees filled inns. They camped near Arroyo, sending nightly wires north. One dusk Jonah sat on blanket, writing to Marley's. Asterisk day 4, still waiting. Wish you were here to count their ledger errors. Water tastes like tin, horses restless. Dreamed of still water peaches. Asterisk. He tucked letter, stared at red horizon storm brewing. Back at ranch, Marley's sealed 182 signatures, couriered to Summit Falls district clerk. Then they sharpened defenses, posted lookouts at spring, boiled water for drought reserves, trained orchard hoses like rifles. Drought tightened. Wells lowered. On 7th day without word, black clouds towered distant but withheld rain. Instead, they gave lightning-forked tongues that licked dry grass. Marley stood on porch as night crackled with electricity. A single bolt struck sagebrush near south fence. Flames leapt. She rallied bucket brigade. They doused before spread. As adrenaline eased, horse whinnies echoed. Silas rode in fast. Railmen dozen camped half-mile below spring. Drilling new pipe at dawn under guard. Ephraim loaded rifle. We drive 'em out, Marley's lifted hand. No shooting unless shot. We show numbers, stall until petition hearing. Bartram's scratched beard. Numbers few with Pa gone. Neighbors. Answer call, she said. Signal fire now. They lit tall bonfire on ridge, a pre-arranged beacon. Orange plumes stabbed sky. Across valley, 2 more fires bloomed, Daisy Bluff and Ortega Ranch answering. Come dawn. 30 settlers rode to Quail Ridge. Spindle Spur crew 8 men with shovels, and 2 Pinkerton guards froze at sight of locals lined along ridge with rifles cradled but not aimed. Van Cleef emerged from tent, impeccable even at sunrise. She scanned assembly, again locking gaze with Marley's. Good morning, she called, tone smooth as burnished mahogany. You trespass on chartered rail property. No, Marley's replied, voice clear. You trespass on homestead water. Injunction. Filed. She brandished clerk-stamped notice. Van Cleef arched brow. Hearings take weeks. Work proceeds meanwhile. Marley stepped horseshoe distance closer. Courts also frown on intimidation by armed guards. Any step forward we document as contempt. She lifted boxy camera, borrowed from town photographer plate. Already loaded. Van Cleef's smile faltered. Pinkertons shifted uneasily. Furthermore, Marley's continued, every rancher here signed petition. Governor's desk will groan. How loud will your investors groan under delay headlines? Van Cleef's nostrils flared. She gestured. Workers lowered shovels. We resume after ruling, she said, voice clipped. She turned away, but over shoulder murmured to Marley's alone. This is not finished. Marley's watched tents collapse. Railsmen retreat with grumbles. Stillwater folk cheered soft. But triumph tasted tempered. Van Cleef's parting words coiled like rattler and brush. Marley's gathered the neighbors to thank them, promising updates. They rode off, leaving Langfords guarding spring. That night Marley's dreamed of trains again, brakes screeching, steam engulfing orchard, peaches shriveling in hot blast. She woke before dawn, heart racing. Something felt off. House silent. But for old boards creaking in windless dark, she wrapped shawl, padded hallway. Silas snored behind closed door. Fisher's loft hatch open, boy breathing deep. She descended stairs, lantern raised. The study door stood ajar. She pushed inside. Papers unsettling on desk, though windows shut. Ledger open, pages riffled, candle. Stub flickered on sill, nearly spent. She frowned. She had doused all lamps. She approached desk. A single photograph lay face up, one she had taken that morning of rail crew retreating. Someone had block printed across it in red ink. Asterisk asterisk this. Is your price? Asterisk asterisk. Her blood chilled. On wall above desk, dart-pinned map, marking spots, ranch house, spring, orchard, knife edge pass. Knots formed in her stomach. Intruder had walked the house while they slept. She spun, heart thudding, scanning shadows. Nothing. Heavy boot clomp from porch. Silas burst in, rifle raised. Bartram spotted Ryder leaving north pasture at gallop. You see? She handed photo. His face hardened. Wake everyone, she said. Post guard, and fetch Fisher. We may ride tonight. To where? She tapped map's third pin. Knife. Edge pass. Where my price was set. Lightning flashed through parlor window, followed by delayed thunderstorm finally crossing valley. Rain hammered roof. Silas swallowed. Road will be mud. Marley straightened. Then we ride mud. She pulled her shawl tighter, staring at inked words. This is your price. No, she whispered to the empty room, to the storm, to the rattling rail empire beyond. This is my worth. Outside, thunder cracked again, rattling windows like bars, reminding prisoner of the cage she once escaped. But Marley's Keen was nobody's captive now, and as rain poured, she fetched her carbine. A handful of bullets, and the 5-cent coin strung beside silver vial. Talismans against the night. The battle for Stillwater's soul had shifted from fire and gunpowder to law and ink, but predators prowled both arenas. She would meet them on every field. She limped into downpour, cane forgotten. Rain sheeted off the eaves like curtains torn loose from the sky, and the parched July earth drank greedily, uncaring that the downpour drenched men and beasts alike. Lightning spider webbed across the peaks above Stillwater, stark as fractured bone, throwing white-hot glimpses of barn timbers, windmill vanes, and the determined figure limping across the muddy yard. Marley's Keen no longer leaned on her cane. Adrenaline and anger braced her better than wood. Thunder muffled the slap of her boots, but she moved with purpose toward the tool shed where the Spencer carbine and 2 shell belts hung ready. Each stride splashed mud up her hemslace and calico ruined, though she scarcely noticed. The house behind her awoke with frantic voices as Silas shouted orders. Fisher scrambled down ladder rungs, and Ephraim swung the barn's lantern high to signal the twins across the orchard. She should have felt fear. That had been the sensible emotion back in Thorn Gap, at the auction block, and again amid black spur bullets. But what coursed through her now was something fiercer and colder. Van Cleef's intruder had passed within arm's reach of the Langford children. The message scrawled in red across her photograph was an invitation to surrender, penned in ink the color of fresh blood. She would answer, certainly, but not with surrender. A gust caught the shed door, flinging it outward. Marley's ducked inside, yanked the oiled canvas from the Spencer, and counted cartridges by touch. 53 rounds. Enough if she placed each shot with care. Silas appeared in the doorway, lamp halo trembling in his hand. Rain carved rivulets through the soot on his cheeks. Bartram's bridling the Appaloosis, he said. Ezekiel's saddling mule for Fisher boy insists on riding. No, Marley's replied, slinging the rifle. Fisher guards the orchard with Nicodemus. We can't leave the spring or the house bare. Silas set the lamp on a stump. What's the plan? Knife edge. Pass. She snatched a canvas bedroll from the wall. Intruder's map pins it. That's where Peyo and Jonah will break camp on their return. Van Cleef aims to corner them in the Narrows, and she thinks we won't brave the storm to warn them. Silas's jaw worked. You and I can't take on a rail company ambush alone, Marley's. Then we won't be alone. She cinched the bedroll. I've already signaled the neighbors. Craddock's men know the pass better than any surveyor. Ortega's vaqueros will ride if we ask. Lightning flashed again, illuminating Silas's hesitant eyes. Doc Green says your ankle. She cut him off. Doc Green isn't here. Jonah is a heartbeat of silence. Rain hammered the tin roof like fired shot. Then Silas nodded. Give me 5 minutes. Exactly 5 minutes later, 6 riders splashed out of the Stillwater yard. Silas on his roan, Bartram astride the big dappled, Ephraim and Ezekiel sharing the 2 lean sorrels, and Marley's perched on Abigail's old Dunmar, the same gentle horse that had carried her to Simmerhorn. Her skirts were belted up like a cavalryman's coat to ride astride. A waterproof pouch inside her bodice sheltered the 5-cent coin and Jonah's wilted milkweed. Another, lashed to her saddle, carried the incriminating photo and map. Fisher stood beside the windmill tower, rifle across his knees, eyes shining with the fear he would not voice. Marley slowed long enough to lean from the saddle and touch his cheek. "Mind the orchard," she said, "and remember your breathing drill." He nodded hard, rain dripping from his fringe. "Bring him back." She squeezed the reins and heeled the mare forward. They pounded across the flooded flats, hooves splashing water that had gathered above baked hardpan, turning the prairie into a shallow sea. The lightning receded, leaving only grumble of thunder. Behind, night's black resumed, broken by their lanterns, each hooded to a narrow slit. They avoided the main rail grade, keeping to cattle trails screened by juniper and shale OUTCROPPINGs. By midnight, they reached Daisy Bluff, Craddock's. Ranch house lights flickered despite the hour. Word had traveled fast along the beacon line. 4 of the rancher's hands waited saddled. Mrs. Craddock, hair braided down her back like a rope she might climb to heaven if need arose, pressed a packet of hardtack into Marlis's hand. "For strength," she said simply. They added Ortega's vaqueros, a trio of wiry riders, whose serapes flapped in the wind, and 2 wheat farmers from the far flats. The rain slackened to a mist as the posse, now a dozen strong, wound into the broken country at the base of the knife edge. The knife edge pass was less a road and more a wounding, a narrow scar carved into basalt cliffs that plunged 200 feet. On either side, wagon teams dreaded it. Only desperate freight or foolhardy rustlers attempted passage after dark. But tonight the pass was the fastest route back into the high mesas where Zeke's party would be camped. Waiting out the storm, Silas reigned beside Marley's at the mouth of the pass. Dawn's first gray bruised the eastern rim. Wind hissed through cracks, carrying the scent of wet rock and something sharper sulfur, powder residue. She raised a hand, halting the column. "Douse lanterns," she whispered. "We go quiet." They obeyed, urging horses to pick their way by feel. Every clink of bridle seemed thunderous in the hush. The cliffs funneled the wind into low moans. Marley's kept the Spencer across her lap, safety off. Half a mile in, Silas's mount snorted, ears swiveling toward a bend where the trail narrowed to single file. Marley slid from the saddle, wincing as ankle barked, and crept forward, boots muffled by damp dust. She pressed against the cliff face, inching toward the choke point. A flicker orange ember, then darkness. Someone had taken a drag on a cigarette and pinched the coal between fingers. She crouched behind a boulder, heart-pounding voices. Drifted. Orders straight from Mrs. Van Cleef. Lug the kegs up top, lace the fuse, and wait for the wagon team. Blow the whole flank once the old man's horses step under. Another voice grumbled. Why not shoot him and be done? Railway wants accident. Cave-ins tidy. A chuckle. Besides, dead cattle baron and his brood clears last holdout for the water scheme. Marley's felt ice in her veins. Blasting powder again. She pictured Zeke, Jonah, Nicodemus, threading this pass at daybreak, unsuspecting. She motioned Silas forward, whispering rapid Spanish so Ortega's men would understand. Asterisk, 4 saboteurs on ledge above. Charges set. Asterisk, Bartram hefted his long rifle. Marley shook her head. No gunfire. Blast kegs would cook. She scanned cliff. A goat path ascended 20 yards behind their current position, winding to the shelf where dynamite would be planted. She gestured to Ephraim and 1 vaquero. Flank. Left, scale. Take out sentries silently. Silas and Bartram would climb right. Marley's herself slung the carbine, drew Jonah's hunting knife from boot sheath. and began the ascent. Rock scraped her palms raw, ankle protested, but she welcomed the pain. It kept focus razor sharp. At the lip, she flattened, listening. Saboteurs had stacked 3 wooden crates along the ledge, each stenciled with rail company markings. A spool of fuse snaked across gravel toward a plug drilled into cliff rock. 2 men knelt over the hole, tamping powder. A third stood lookout, rifle slung. The 4th reclined against crate, cigarette ember glowing again. Marlies waited until Ephraim's soft owl call sounded from the far side. She rose into a crouch, knife ready, the lookout turned eyes widening at the sight of a drenched woman, with murder in her gaze. He opened his mouth, but her throwing arm snapped before the first syllable. The butt of the Spencer swung like a club connected with his skull. He crumpled without a shout. Now chaos burst. Ephraim tackled the smoker, yanking him down in silent grapple. Silas slammed rifle butt into a tamping man's gut. Bartram seized the last by collar, hurling him into the cliff wall hard enough to daze. Marlies kicked the powder crate away from the drilled hole and stomped out the fuse spark. Rain began anew, soaking the exposed powder useless. Within seconds, the saboteurs lay bound, gagged with their own neckerchiefs. She knelt beside the lookout. In the dawn's growing light, she could see tattooed letters on his wrist. B.S. Black. Spur, not merely rail workers but hired guns forged from the same mold as Kane. Silas scanned the pass below. "More coming," he whispered, pointing. Phoebe ATS. Floated upward 4 riders, entering choke point from the western approach. In the dawn gloom, Marlies recognized the leading silhouette, hat brim wide, riding habit unmistakable. Aurelia Van Cleef herself, astride a sleek black gelding. Behind her trailed 3 Pinkertons, rifles ready. Bartram hefted rope. "We dropped these kegs on 'em," Marlies shook her head. "No casualties makes us villains. We need proof of their intent." She removed the intruder's map and scribbled addendum. Asterisk sabotage thwarted at knife edge by Stillwater Coalition. Asterisk. She pinned it to the largest crate. Below, Van Cleef reined to a halt, gaze snapping to the ledge. Her honey gold eyes narrowed as she spotted bound men. Marlies stepped forward into full view, rain plastering hair across her face. Van Cleef's voice rose cool and clear. "Impressive, Miss Keene. I underestimated your tenacity." "Underestimation is a habit of yours," Marlies called. "How's the powder order these days? Running low?" 1 Pinkerton lifted rifle, but Van Cleef signaled him down. "This pass is chartered territory. You obstruct lawful commerce." "Lawful commerce doesn't involve murder," Marlies retorted. "Charges set to drop a rockslide on Ezekiel Langford. And a federal marshal hardly qualifies as rail work." She gestured to crates. Van Cleef's gaze flickered. "Those men acted beyond instruction. I will ensure they are disciplined." Halfway down, Fisher galloped up with Nicodemus's spare pony, whooping. Heard thunder signal, figured you'd need messenger. He skidded to halt, cheeks flushed. Jonah ruffled his hair. Zeke praised his grit. Marlies silently thanked. Heavens he'd remained safe. By dusk, they reached the rolling foothills. Rain clouds parted, revealing a rainbow arcing over Stillwater like a ribbon tying past to future. The posse dispersed, each rider peeling off toward their homesteads with shouts of victory promises. At the Langford yard, lanterns glowed welcoming. Mrs. Craddock had sent blackberry pies. Pastor Fitch left a note quoting Isaiah's rivers in the desert. Fisher led Jonah to the ledger table where Marlies had penciled new columns. *** spring flow stable. Orchard fruit swelling. Community 150 signatures. He added a stroke, making it 151, then kissed ink-stained fingertips and pressed them to Marlies's temple. Later, when exhaustion tangled her limbs, Marlies climbed the stairs slowly. The Spare room awaited what had been her refuge that first night. Now quilt squares smelled of lavender, not ash. She set the Spencer against the wall, then opened her palm to examine her talismans. The 5-cent coin glinted next to milkweed petals, now dried and fragile but intact. She nestled them back inside the silver vial and hung it upon the bedpost. A sentinel of tarnished shine dot outside. Night insects tuned their chorus. She lay down, storm-bruised muscles humming. Thunder boomed one final time far to the south, the retreating roar of yesterday's war. Half-sleep pulled her under. In dreams, she heard rail hammers and the hush of orchard leaves. Voices mingled Van Cleef's promise, Zeke's oath, Jonah's heartbeat. Stillwater stood, roots deep. But the railroad still advanced, hungry. Morning sun streamed warm through open shutters. Marley's rose early despite fatigue, patting the window. Across the yard, Jonah and Zeke conversed with a stranger tall coat dusty deputy star. Glinting, she hurried downstairs. Marshal North's messenger, Jonah explained. Hearing moved up governor will review petition in Summit Falls this Friday. Friday 3 days away. Marlis's breath caught. We need every signer. Present, Zeke grimaced. Rail lawyers will stall. We need more than signers. Need proof water diversion threatened whole valley. Need cattle weighed, crop forecasts, doctor's testimony. She nodded, pulse quickening. We gather evidence. Jonah squeezed her shoulders. Together. They spent the day collecting. Doc Green produced medical charts of dehydration illnesses after spring cutoff. Fisher tallied orchard losses. Ortega's vaqueros wrought a scale model of diverted pipeline. Pastor Fitch volunteered to drive an entire wagon load of witnesses. The night before the hearing, neighbors gathered at Stillwater again. Lanterns illuminated barrels serving as classroom desks. Marley stood at front, reciting agenda. Voices buzzed. With nervous hope, halfway through her briefing, she paused, heart swelling. The moment felt immense. So many lives converged because one woman refused her auction price. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. Laughter rippled her bright, borrowed line a quick breath. Before battle. Even Zeke chuckled. By dawn, 5 wagons rolled south, carrying 70 souls to Summit Falls. Marley's rode up front beside Jonah. Behind them, rain-washed hills gleamed green. The governor's dais in Summit Falls courthouse loomed. Like judgment itself. Rail attorneys arrayed in black frocks, silver watch chains flashing. Aurelia Van Cleef sat to their right, gloves immaculate, gaze unreadable. Marley's adjusted collar, stepping to podium with ledger under arm. Judge Barstow cleared throat. Petitioner, state your case. She inhaled, feeling 5-cent coin warm. At her breastbone. Your Honor, she began. My name is Marley's Keen Langford by future intent. And I stand not just for Stillwater Creek, but for every homestead whose roots run deeper than any rail spur. I was sold once for 5 cents in bread. I learned then that price isn't worth. Today Spindle Spur offers $50 for our springa. Spring that feeds 100 souls, 50,000 head of cattle, and hope that even drought can't wither. She opened ledger, fingers steady. This is the account, blood inked, rain smudged, but true. And while a rail can bend around a canyon, a community must stand straight or break. We choose to stand. She laid evidence, photos of sabotage, crates of powder labeled rail property, medical reports, water flow charts. Gasps murmured in chamber. Van Cleef's lip twitched, but she rose smooth. Your Honor, these theatrical props prove nothing. Private contractors overstep, company denies knowledge. Zeke strode forward, slipping a letter onto Judge's desk, the original eminent domain notice bearing her signature. Silence sizzled. Judge Barstow eyed Van Cleef. Madam, do you dispute this document? Her poise cracked only a flicker. I acted within charter. Charter does not sanction murder. His gavel tapped. Hearing postponed pending. Criminal investigation. Interim injunction granted. Water rights remain with Langford and Coalition until final ruling. Cheers erupted from settlers, townsfolk, even a few city merchants tired of corporate greed. Marley swayed as relief washed through. Jonah caught her waist. Van Cleef glided from chamber, claws sheathed but eyes promising future reckonings. Back at Stillwater, they celebrated modestly. Peach cobbler, fiddle tunes, children racing fireflies. Under stars, Zeke lifted mug and toast. To roots. Glasses CLINKED. After midnight, Marley's and Jonah strolled Orchard Rose. Peaches glowed rosy in moonlight. He plucked one, sliced with penknife, offered half. Sweet juice ran down her wrist. He brushed it away, lips lingering on palm. Heartbeats matched. I bought ring, he whispered. Copper, last time tarnished. This one is silver. She closed his fist with hers. Soon we'll marry after verdict final. I want Stillwater secured first. He smiled, tucking ring safely. Then we keep fighting. She gazed at horizon, where rails gleamed faint under moon. Van Cleef won't yield. He nodded, nor will we. Wind rustled leaves like applause from unseen audience. They walked on, shoulder to shoulder, plotting irrigation ditches, schoolhouse lessons, and milkweed bouquets for every table. Far off, a train whistle sounded lonely, defiant. Marley squeezed Jonah's hand. Let it whistle. We'll plant. Orchards so thick they swallow its echo. Yet even as she spoke, lantern light flared atop distant ridge, unfamiliar, flicking signal code she couldn't read. She stiffened, instincts prickling. The war wasn't over. Behind them, orchard darkness shifted, figures slipping between trees. Steel glinted, belt. Our allies turned, breath hitching, and saw the silhouette raise a revolver. She shoved Jonah down as shot rang, branch above splintering. She drew her own pistol, firing into dark. Footsteps pounded away. She lunged after, but ankle protested. She stumbled. Jonah caught her. Who? He gasped. She stared into shadows, pulse roaring. Only crickets answered, but she knew. Van Cleef had loosed more than saboteurs. She had loosed a private war that crept like night through Orchard Rose. Marley's holstered pistol, breathing hard. Lightning flickered on horizon again, heralding new storm. She straightened, chin high. Stillwater stands, she whispered. So will we. And the thunder answered with a growl, promise or warning, she could not tell. Thunder rolled over Stillwater, once more, promise or warning. She could not tell. Marley's Keen stood still beneath the orchard canopy. Rain clean night air sharp in her lungs and gunpowder harsher still. Somewhere ahead, beyond the staggered black of apple trunks, the would-be assassin crashed through undergrowth, spurring a horse she could no longer see. The hoofbeats faded toward the east ridge and the unfinished rail spur, their meaning as clear as the bullet groove carved into bark above Jonah's bent head. No one spoke. Not yet. The storm muttered across the mesa like a judge conferring with unseen clerks, and the orchard leaves whispered secrets in a tongue only sleepless trees could decipher. Marley's let her pulse slow, forcing each breath to loosen fingers still locked around the Colt's grip. She smelled sap where the branch had splintered, the scent oddly like fresh-cut melon. Jonah lifted himself from the muddy row, eyes wide but steady. You hurt? Only pride. Her voice rasped, roughened by adrenaline. He meant to scare or kill. Either way, he missed. A lantern bobbed between trunks, Silas, panting, shotgun ready. Behind, Ephraim and Ezekiel fanned outward, calling. Code clicks to Fisher at the windmill. They'd found no intruder, only churned hoofprints and the glint of a spent shell. Silas reached them, rain plastering hair to scalp. Tracks head east. 2 riders, 1 light, 1 heavy. Van Cleef's men, most likely. We lost them past the arroyo. Marley's holstered her sidearm and pressed palms to thighs, steadying. Leave the trail. Fighting blind favors them. We strengthen. Home before dawn, Jonah eyed the broken branch. They know which tree to shake next time. They think they do. She touched the trunk's raw scar. So we move the target. Chapter 1. The quiet before Counter-Strike. First light bled silver across the valley, revealing puddles that mirrored an unsettled sky. Roosters crowed late, confused by the sleepless household. Inside the Langford kitchen, steam. Fogged window panes. Marley's poured chicory for every bleary face gathered. Zeke, weathered but unbowed. Silas, shoulders roped with tension. Nicodemus, hat turning in calloused hands. Bartram slouched near the iron stove, eyes scanning each doorway as though bullets lurked behind flour sacks. Fisher perched on stool beside the ledger, bruises of fatigue under his eyes, yet determined to copy Marlis's notes. Asterisk night attack. Direction, shell caliber. Hoofprint size. Asterisk. He wrote every detail in tidy rows, evidence for a court not yet convened. Zeke broke silence. We knew Van Cleef would keep pressing. But murder on our own ground, can't let that pass. Silas tapped the map spread across table. Pinkerton camp sits here, along rail grade. 20 men maybe. If they ride tonight, they could reach. The spring again, Jonah shook his head. They're done with sabotage. They aim to break morale in the orchard, where Marley's walks nightly. All eyes shifted to her. She felt heat rise but met their gaze. Then they believe I'm the hinge. Good. Hinges swing both ways. She pointed to knife edge mark. Here we beat them because we chose the ground. We do the same again. Tonight. We empty orchard, set a trap. Bartram's grin flashed. Draw 'em where we want. Nicodemus leaned forward. What bait? Marley's folded the photograph, the one defaced with scarlet ink, and laid it on map, centering the orchard. Me. Chapter 2. The storm bait. All day Stillwater hummed like a struck anvil. Messages flew by courier to neighboring ranches. Asterisk quiet muster at dusk. No firearms beyond the creek line. No lanterns after MORRISE. Asterisk. Pastor Fitch's youths, strung wire, snares among the outer pecan rows. Ortega's vaqueros dug dummy irrigation ditches to funnel hooves into choke points. Craddock's blacksmith nephew loaned an iron hog catcher spiked, caltrops that could maim a charging horse, but the heart of the trap rested on Marlis's shoulders and the simple fact that Van Cleef's shooters believed she still paced the orchard nightly, inspecting bark scars. Shortly after sunset, Jonah helped her dress in a pale blouse newly torn at the hem, visible even in gloom. Around her neck, the silver violin coin rested like a pendant bullseye. She strapped a derringer inside her right sleeve and slipped the Spencer's sawed-off twin into holster at spine. Jonah's hands lingered on each buckle. She felt his breath on her nape. Stay behind the third row of barrels, he whispered. Don't step past the marker rope no matter what. She twisted, kissed his palm. Watch your own flank. I'll watch mine. Clouds rolled in again, heavy with unspent fury. No rain, yet only a hush that made even the cicadas nervous. Lanterns atop barn were snuffed. Only red cold torches burned low behind barricades, invisible from valley floor. Marley's walked the orchard path alone, deliberately visible, when moonlight broke. She stopped at the scarred tree, tracing fingers along wound, then continued toward the far gate. Each footstep thudded in her ears wider than drums. Beyond the creek, hidden eyes tracked her. Fisher and Nicodemus crouched behind water barrels. Silas in loft slot, twins near caltrops. Ortega's 3 lying belly down in ditch. Craddock's muzzle loader leaning ready. Minutes crawled. Then hoofbeat soft, careful, approaching from east. She kept walking, heart hammering. A twig snapped behind. She slowed, pretended to examine leaves. A voice low, mocking. Evening, 5 cent. Cold washed her spine. She did not turn. Another spoke to left. Hands where we can see, missus. She raised them slowly. The orchards. Closed after dark. Laughter. Company prefers midnight harvests. Moon slid from cloud, revealing 3 riders half-circled, 2 Pinkertons, and behind them, the auburn-haired Van Cleef herself, silhouette erect. The pistol glimmered in her gloved hand. "Step toward me, Miss Keene," she commanded. "Nicely." Marley's. Obeyed, halting at the rope-strung ankle-high marker of safe line. 20 more feet would place her within Caltrop Field. 30 would trip wire to drop the snare gate. Van Cleef's gaze flicked downward. Noting rope. Smart. She dismounted, coat shedding raindrops. "No farther. We chat here." The Pinkertons spread, rifles ready. Van Cleef approached, eyes glowing. "Cat-like. The governor's injunction bought you time. It will not stand. Rail owns that water within months. But you may leave wealthy if you sell your stake quietly now." She drew a folded contract. $20,000. Enough. To buy 10 orchards east of the Mississippi. Marlis's chest rose with measured breath. "And quit this valley to sink under your dam?" "Progress, dear. Commerce. Empires run on steam, not sentiment." Lightning flickered miles south. Frail echo of last night. Marley's resisted urge to glance up the slope where all eyes watched. She said, "I was sold once. Never again." Van Cleef's polite mask, cracked eyes hardening. "Very well, then history forgets you here." She raised pistol. Marley's twisted, snapping wrist. Derringer slid into palm, fired once flare of white. Pistol flew from Van Cleef's grip. Pinkertons jerked reins. Horses reared. Silas's shotgun roared from loft. Buckshot spanged near rifleman's stirrup. Ortega's men rose, lariats whistling, catching one carbine, yanking rider down. Caltrops clanked as the second horse launched, throwing its mount into irrigation trench. Bartram burst from haystack, clubbing down the pinned Pinkerton. Fisher's signal rocket soared skyward, popping green, a call to Craddock and Daisy Bluff. Watchers. Van Cleef stumbled back, clutching stung hand, fury blazing. Marley stepped forward. "Drop your ledger, Aurelia." Instead, the rail baroness pulled dagger from boot and lunged. Marley's parried with barrel of Derringer, steel scraped. Van Cleef kicked, connecting with Marlis's injured ankle. Pain flared. White, dropping her to knee. Jonah shouted, vaulting fence with axe handle. Pinkerton number 2 leveled rifle at him, only to spin as Ephraim Boole tackled from side. Marley's rolled, grabbing Van Cleef's wrist, twisting. The dagger clattered. She rose ankle screaming and pressed Derringer to the woman's chest. Enough. Van Cleef's breaths came ragged. Rain finally decided, pattering leaves. Around them, the skirmish died. 2 Pinkertons bound, the third limping away before being roped. Zeke stepped from house porch, Winchester leveled. "You trespass, Van Cleef. You'll answer in court now." She spat rainwater. "Court belongs to men with money, Langford. I have oceans. Money can't buy back the powder crates," Silas growled. "Nor this attack." Marley's lowered. Derringer but kept finger near trigger. "Leave my orchard tonight under guard. Come morning, you'll stand before the marshal again. Pray the judge finds mercy." Van Cleef's lips thinned, but she lifted chin, regal, even mud spattered. "Pray you've severed the right head, Marlies. Dragons grow 2 for each lost." Bartram bound her wrists. Nicodemus searched saddlebags, producing rail documents and folded telegraphs. He whistled. "Listen here. Rail Consortium approves contingency sundown secure rolling stock via tunnel spur." Jonah frowned. "Rolling stock?" Marlis's gut nodded. Tunnel spur lay west beyond Knife Edge, where rail crews bored through shale for freight bypass. "They'll send train through canyon, not pass. Sabotage at orchard a distraction." She snatched telegram, scanning. "Carloads. On NVIL. Hardtack, lamp oil code names for ammunition. Explosives, coal oil. A freight train loaded with volatile cargo, set to pass under Stillwater's Massa Gorge. One detonation could collapse Creek's entire watershed, killing Orchard, ranches miles downstream without a single rifle fired. Marley's looked to Zeke. They're moving the war underground. Thunder boomed, rain soaking deeper. Silas helped her mount Jonah's horse. Tunnels 4 miles. We can intercept. At Switch if we ride hard. Van Cleef smirked despite ropes. You'll never outrun steel. At dawn, the wreck at Tunnel Spur still smoldered, sending skeins of oily smoke across the hard blue of a July morning. Coal embers glowed like dragon eyes in the twisted ribs of freight cars, and busted barrels of lamp oil dripped amber tears into the gravel. But the mesa-held Stillwater's springs ran clear, orchard roots unharmed. For the first time since the auction block at Thorn Gap, Marley's Keene looked upon devastation without feeling owned by it. Federal marshals ringed the site. Reporters from the Territorial Post sketched crude illustrations of the railway catastrophe. And through all of it, Aurelia Van Cleef sat straight-backed in a folding chair, wrists cuffed, chin high, eyes the color of heated bronze fixed on the woman she blamed Marley's. "I warned you," Van Cleef murmured as guards lifted her toward the wagon that would bear her to Summit Falls Jail. "Cut one head, another grows." Marley's met the gaze coolly. "Then we'll plant orchards until you run out of heads." Van Cleef's laugh sounded almost admiring, almost dot behind the marshal's wagon. The 3 surviving Pinkertons bruised, wrists bound limped into a second coach. And at the very rear, Wade Kane, rope biting fresh into his wrists, winked when he caught Marlis's eye. "See you on the appeal, sweetheart." Marley said nothing. She watched the wagons jolt away across sunlit sage. Only when the dust had settled did she let a sigh fold through her ribs. "It isn't finished." Jonah Langford slid an arm around her shoulders. "No, but the day's still young enough for peaches." Hesh, 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 hesh. Chapter 1. Tallying the cost. 3 days later, the Langford dining room smelled of new milled cedar, ink, and simmering berry compote. Every ledger sat open, pages fluttering in the prairie breeze that funneled through repaired windows. Marley's, pen between teeth, counted crates of dynamite, salvaged intact 12 and columns of damages the rail consortium would owe $17,946 by her reckoning. Silas leaned over, running a scarred finger down the page. "Forget the 2 milk cows that aborted from shock." She added the line, Asterisk Bessie and Gretel, 2 head at $38 EA. Asterisk Jonah wedged another plank into the new pantry frame. Hammer thuds kept rhythm with Fisher's chalkboard scribble spelling drills for 10 neighbor children now tutored at Stillwater, while Daisy Bluff's schoolhouse awaited a new roof. The ranch had become village center and fortress both, and with it came endless arithmetic. Outside, Nicodemus and Bartram supervised orchard pickers. Despite storms, sabotage, and steam blasts, branches hung heavy with fruit-pink blush on golden skin. Hope made edible. Yet each time Marley's closed her eyes, she saw Wade Kane's wink. He'd escaped custody once. Who was to swear he wouldn't again? And Van Cleef money bought lawyers the way bullets bought holes. That night she climbed the windmill ladder, resting on narrow platform high above lamplight. The prairie stretched moon-silvered, serene. Jonah joined, handing tin cup of peppermint. "Tea. Sleep would help," he offered. "Soon." She sipped, savoring cool breeze. "When the hearing's final and the valley safe." He brushed wind-tossed strands from her cheek. Marshall telegraphed Van Cleef's arraignment set in Summit Falls Friday. "Governor will preside," Marley's exhaled. "Then Friday we ride." Hesh, hesh, hesh. Chapter 2. The governor's chair Friday. Broke sweltering, heat already wringing sweat from collarbones. 20 wagons rolled into Summit Falls. Langford's out front, followed by Craddock ranchers, Ortega vaqueros, Fitch parishioners, and shopkeepers whose ledgers bore rail losses. They wore best homestead clothes, patched but clean and pinned peach. Blossoms to lapels as silent symbol. Roots over rails. The courthouse loomed sandstone. Flags snapping overhead. Inside, ceiling fans churned stale air scented with paper and anxious humanity. Governor Albertius P. Harkness, lawman turned politician, sat in high-backed oaken chair flanked by 2 federal judges. His walrus mustache quivered as he read the docket. Greater than asterisk territory of Colorado v. Aurelia Van Cleef et al. Charges: conspiracy to commit sabotage, attempted murder, illegal diversion of water, violation of homestead protection at asterisk Van Cleef. Swept into chamber, shackles removed for decorum, emerald dress immaculate. Her lawyer slick-haired, Chicago accent objected to the peach blossoms as trial by sentiment. The governor overruled with twinkling eyes. Marlies took the stand first. She told her story from auction block price to tunnel spur blast voice, steady though palms damp. Rail Council tried to shake timeline, but she wielded ledgers like sabers. Numbers unassailable. Silas produced the crate's rail bills of lading. Ortega testified about pipe trench. Fisher, small voice proud, described signal fires that summoned neighbors. Then came Wade Kane, unexpected. U.S. Marshal had struck. Deal: testify against Van Cleef in exchange for sentence at faraway penitentiary. He swaggered into box, offered oily grin at Marlies. She hired my boys, Kane drawled, to scare the valley quiet. Powder, pipeline, all of it her scheme. Van Cleef's eyes never left Marlies. Her gloves flexed, but she said nothing. By dusk, the governor conferred. Courtroom hummed. Jonah squeezed Marlis's hand beneath table. 5-cent coin pressed between their palms. Gavel slammed. On charges of conspiracy and attempted murder. Judge Barstow intoned, "We find Aurelia Van Cleef guilty. Sentenced to 10 years in territorial prison, plus fines equal to triple. Documented damages, murmur shock at lenience, only 10. All F fines, $50,838. Van Cleef's jaw clenched. At last she spoke. "I will appeal until rails rust." "Appeal is your right," Governor Harkness replied. "But until..." "Granted, you will remain guest of Fort Union." Shackles clicked. She was led away. As she passed Marlies, their eyes locked. No hatred now, only grudging respect tinged with prophecy. Chapter 3. Homestead and Harvest Light. Van Cleef behind bars. Water rights reaffirmed. Stillwater. Exhaled as though after holding breath an entire season. August ripened to gold. Peaches blushed deeper. Calves kicked dust halos at sunset. Marlis oversaw building of a small schoolhouse white clapboard. Bells salvaged from a derelict riverboat. She taught letters in mornings, rode fences at noon, and drafted orchard expansion plans by lamplight. Jonah built a wooden arch at Garden Gate, carving apple boughs entwined with milkweed pods, symbol of hard sweetness and fragile hope. On a Sunday cooled by early frost scent, Pastor Fitch gathered neighbors under giant cottonwood behind the barn. Lanterns hung from branches. Lace tablecloths covered sawhorses. Fiddle tunes drifted. Marlies wore ivory calico, hair woven with peach blossoms. Jonah, nervous, smooth jacket that fit snug over broad shoulders. Fisher best man, though still. Weeks shy of 14 carried silver ring. The copper version now strung from his neck as reminder of first proposal. Zeke stood tall, tears unshed, as he placed Marlis's hand into Jonah's. Vows exchanged under cottonwood would have satisfied any church in the territory. But Pastor Fitch spoke extra blessing. May roots you plant outlive rails, storms, and dynasties. When Jonah kissed her, applause erupted, shouted hallelujahs, rifle shots skyward, goat bleats of confusion. The peach blossoms in her braid trembled, but did not fall. That night, after music dwindled and lanterns dimmed, Marlies and Jonah slipped away to orchard. Moonlight painted fruit silver. Owls questioned intruders softly. They walked row to row, hands entwined. Speaking of quiet things, names for future children, she favored Abigail if daughter. Blueprint for irrigation windmill. Translation of orchard records into ledgers Fisher could manage. Near scarred tree, the one chipped by bullet. They paused. Marlies touched the healed bark, its wound grown callous, but visible. Reminders, she whispered. Jonah wrapped arms around her. Lightning-stitched horizon. Distant, but bright. Storm season not done. Marlies breathed deep, tasting electricity. She wasn't afraid storms brought water. Chapter 4. The appeal. Autumn rains fattened. Creeks. Fort Union's walls dripped with chill. Inside infirmary ward. A guard found Wade Kane dead at dawn, throat slit by sharpened spoon. Cells unlocked from inside. Van Cleef's cell stood empty, barred door sawed neat. The Black Spur. Dragon had grown its next head. Telegraph reached Stillwater at breakfast. Jonah lowered sheet, face blanching. She's free. Silence blanketed kitchen. Marley set teapot down carefully. Then we expect her. They convened war council. Langford sons, Craddock, Ortega, Marshall North, by telegraph. Fort Union chase likely. Weeks territory vast. Stillwater must stand alone again. Preparations resumed. New telegraph line direct to sheriff. Tripwire lantern grid across orchard. Safe room under schoolhouse stocked with water. Marley's drilled children hide quiet, recite psalm if scared. 1. Crisp twilight, as orchard leaves bronze shimmered. Silas galloped in. Rider from Thorn Gap spotted Van Cleef's scout. Jonah clenched axe handle. Zeke polished old Sharp's rifle. Marley's donned leather duster. Mind mapping possible assault spring. Schoolhouse windmill sabotage. Hostage scheme. Days past nothing. Tension coiled. Then letter arrived. Cream paper. Scent of verbena. Dear Mrs. Langford, greater than asterisk. I respect a worthy adversary. Meet me alone at Thorn Gap auction block under next full moon. Bring ledger of water rights. Bring 5-cent coin token of beginnings. Come, and Stillwater sleep safe. Refuse and roots. Burn. Greater than a VC asterisk. Fisher, read over shoulder, voice quake. Jonah cursed. Zeke said flatly, it's a trap. Marlies traced the elegant script. Of course. Silas leaned forward. We ride with you, surround Gap. She shook head. If she sees ambush, she torch Valley before sunrise. I go. But not alone. Her eyes met Fisher's. He swallowed. Understanding without words. Message runner. ###. Chapter 5. Where it began. Full moon waxed like a polished spur. Marlies rode the Dunmare into Thorn Gap 2 hours before midnight. The town looked smaller than memory. Boardwalk warped, mercantile shuttered, auction platform leaning like drunken cowhand. Wind sang through empty windows. She dismounted. Boots echoing on plank where once shackles bit her ankles. 5-cent coin lay warm in palm. Ledger sat under arm. Footsteps. Aurelia Van Cleef stepped from shadows in tailored navy, hair pinned under hat. Moon silvered scar at her jaw. No guns visible, but certainty of hidden blades. Thank you for promptness, she said, tone almost cordial. Marls laid ledger on crate. End this. Sign relinquishment of Stillwater claims. Leave Valley. Van Cleef smiled thin. Your orchard thrives. My investors want share. 51% in exchange for truce. Never. Then. We play another game. She produced a pouch dried milkweed pods. She crushed one. Seeds drifted on breeze. You cherish these. Symbol of hope. But weeds choke rail beds. My men scattered barrels of kerosene through your orchard 2 nights past. Triplers ready. Sign or watch seedlings burn. Marlis's heartbeat hammered. She kept voice steady. You forget one thing. Oh, I never ride alone. From darkness, 2 silhouettes emerged. U.S. Marshal North and deputy, rifles raised. Another shape dropped from blacksmith roof fissure, small but sure, Spencer aimed. Telegraph line tapped to sheriff, posse waiting beyond ridge. Van Cleef's eyes flashed brief anger, then admiration. So be it. She tossed match skyward, flare blossomed above, but nothing ignited. Her brows furrowed. Marl, a loud smile. Rail teaches sabotage. Orchard teaches graft. We replaced barrels with rainwater. Your men helped irrigate. Marshall North cuffed Van Cleef. She did not struggle. You win today, she said quietly to Marley's. But railroads are rivers, drown or ride. Marley's pocketed coin. Then we'll build bridges. Van Cleef nodded. Something like respect at last. Guard that valley. Men like me never stop coming. I know, Marley's murmured, watching wagons dim distant. That's why we plant. Chapter 6. 2 years forward, autumn 1884. Stillwater bustling. Windmill pump powered by rail-grade gears, salvaged from wreck, now filled elevated tank, watering triple-sized orchard. Schoolhouse bell rang each dawn. Fisher now. Taller than Marlis's shoulder taught. Younger kids fractions when she juggled tax ledgers. Jonah and Marlis's daughter, Abigail Peach Langford, toddled under cottonwood, chasing milkweed tufts. Jonah carved sign at driveway. Asterisk Stillwater Orchards and Cooperative Est. 1882. Rooted 1884. Asterisk shipments of preserved peaches traveled by rail, irony not loss, because community purchased minority stake ensuring freight priority and fair rates. Van Cleef's appeal failed. She served sentence drafting water rights policy for governor fitting penance. Wade Kane faded into distant legend, rumored dead in Mexico. Evening glow painted valley. Marley's rocked on porch swing, Abigail asleep against chest. Jonah approached, flour dust on shirt, kissed baby's brow. Orders from Denver up again. He said, need an accountant's cunning. She smiled, heart full. Tomorrow, she stroked Peach soft hair. Tonight we watch roots grow. On horizon, distant train whistle drifted less threat now, more lullaby among coyotes. Orchard leaves rustled answer. Stillwater stood no longer fortress of defense but beacon of resilience. Epilogue, the worth of 5 cents. Every autumn Marley's hiked to scarred apple tree, coin in pocket. She'd press rim against bark, leaving faint crescent on wood, a reminder that even wounds can bear fruit. Fisher, now foreman, once asked why keep coin. She answered, because it measures how far you can travel from who you were priced to be, to who you choose to become. He nodded, understanding more than most. One dawn years later, newspaper headline arrived. Asterisk Transcontinental Railroad honors settlement with homesteads. Cites Stillwater model. Asterisk Jonah spread paper on breakfast table. Marley's traced letters smiling. Van Cleef's prophecy fulfilled, but bent, not broken. Rails and roots now intertwined, each nourishing the other. She tucked coin back into vial beside dried milkweed, a pair that survived every storm, and stepped into sunlit orchard where peaches blushed and bees hummed. Stillwater stood. She stood. And the valley, once forgotten by time now, thrummed with stories of worth beyond any price tag. Asterisk. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Asterisk.